What's up, guys? It's Eli here, and I've got a video today on some of the best chokes no gi. I didn't even count them before I started, and I'm just going to kind of go through a lot of these. So I'll put like in the title how many it is. Doesn't matter though. These are just some good chokes from the mount. Sometimes when you get to the mount position and you don't have the luxury of the gi, and this is not a striking situation, obviously this is just submission, grappling, jiu-jitsu. So I'm going to show some chokes that we can employ from here. One of the ones that I think is really valuable, not even just for the fact that it is a good choke and it can finish people on its own, but it also leads to some good openings if it doesn't land, is the punch choke. And the punch choke is essentially this. I'm going to get my arm underneath his head like this here. Once I get my arm under his head, I'm going to take my secondary hand and I want to make sure his face is oriented up. So I use my chin to do that. I might use my hand and then lock it with my chin, or just use my chin. So I'm using my chin toward his temple right here, not in his eye socket, but this hand now, I'm going to take these knuckles and I'm going to plug the artery manually on this side. My bicep is doing that on the other side. So I plug here now, and then I'm going to grab, this arm grabs on the outside of the forearm, and then I'm going to pull all that together here like this, and it makes a nice little tight choke. When you hear the gurgle, that means it's working right. So essentially what's happening is one side of the triangle, two sides of the triangle, and this fist is coming in for the third side. I'm locking it, squeezing all that together. It's a really powerful choke. It's adjacent to the Ezekiel choke. The no gi Ezekiel is different. So on no gi Ezekiel, essentially, is going to wrap through, and you're going to fold arms, right? So you either fold arms first and then wrap it all the way through to where my hand is going across his throat this way, right? Or you put it in place here and then you fold the arms up if you can and get there. I don't like that one as much as the punch choke personally, but they are adjacent. I wanted to demonstrate that they're two different chokes. So the no gi Ezekiel and the punch choke. The reason I like the punch choke a lot too is a lot of times whenever we get here and he wants to come in and start trying to defend against it, if he goes in to defend it, what he's done by doing that is he's raised his elbow up. And I know if I get that elbow up and he is defending successfully, I can get under the elbow now. So if I wedge my forearm underneath his elbow like this, now I can start walking that arm up. So I'm going to walk. If this is his humerus of his arm right here, I'm going to walk 90 degrees to that. So I'm going to crawl, wedge, crawl, wedge, crawl, wedge. And I'm going to continue that process until his elbow is elevated up here this way. From that point, I'm going to start grabbing at his armpit to help lock it into place. I'll use my face to start pushing that elbow out of the way. Now, from right here, I know I need to get my chin to the outside of his arm. The problem with that is if I'm here and then I try to get my chin to the outside, he may move his elbow, so I can never get around it. So what I like to do instead is put my chin on top of my own bicep, like this. Once I make that happen here, if I can get my chin to my bicep, I know it's on the outside of his arm. So then I just wedge down this way here, right? Like I'm nuzzling into it. I'm going to keep my hand on this shoulder right here for this arm triangle setup. I'm going to sink my shoulder back. One of the most common mistakes is people driving the pressure into the person's face. It's not going to get the strangulation as well. So I'm going to drop my shoulder down nice and tight. My head is going to sink down to the floor, and I'm going to reinforce my first hand here by cupping it on his shoulder, and then everything on my left side melts as I turn to face him this way. Makes that choke a lot tighter. I don't have to dismount. I don't even have to collect my arms in any certain configuration. Honestly, just grabbing that shoulder and reinforcing it here, that is a lock enough here to be able to sink it up. I drop my shoulder down so it's not pressing on his jaw, but it's actually going into his throat now. The rest of it is turning, melting, facing him, and that tightens everything from all sides. So it's a really powerful choke. The head and arm choke, that's just the modification I like to use right there. Now, in the similar vein to this here is if I can start getting his arms separated from his body, and there's lots of ways that we can look to do that, but sometimes if I can get this arm separated out here from his body, then sometimes if there's space between our chests, he'll actually take his arm through the middle to start to grab and protect that arm. If he does that, he really exposes his back a lot. Now I can take his back and start chasing back attacks and whatever. But if I've done a good job here of keeping that space sealed up and keeping his ear to my chest, he can't go through the middle, so sometimes he'll start trying to reach around the outside. When he does that, he gives me a big space in the back here to be able to slide my knee and my elbow up and together. Once I can make that connection here, I've got him up on his side, so I'm gonna start keeping this pressed away, and I'm gonna start lifting his head up like this. With that space that I made now, I have three different options of how I can do this. I can just kick it straight through to here to close up that triangle, right? I might not have the flexibility or mobility for that, so I might need to stop and step here like this on top of his arm and then shoot the rest of the way through. Or I might be getting the resistance enough to where I can punch this to his chest and then shoot all the way through. So those are 3 different ways that I can get to this point here. Once I'm at this point though, to finish up the triangle, what I'm gonna look to do is I'm gonna start turning, and as I go to rotate my hip, that's what pushes his arm across this way. I'm gonna lace my toes on the bottom behind my back leg. So I lift, I flex in like that, and now I wanna keep turning until my shins go parallel to each other. Once my shins are parallel, I should be able to make enough tightness here to be able to get that choke. If I'm not getting the choke from right here, either I can go to the straight arm bar, or I can just roll off and then usually get the correction that I need to be able to finish that triangle from the guard. If you are gonna do that though, I do suggest that you make sure you're about 95% sure that you're gonna get that triangle so that you don't just give up your top position. But again, those are several different routes to get to that mounted triangle being one of the more powerful attacks from the top. So from this position too, if I am successful with setting things up by wedging this arm away from the body, and I do make him come in to start trying to gather that arm up so he's protecting. So something that I can look to do from here, like I said before, he's exposing his back, so sometimes I can use that to start taking his back and then attacking from there. But also right around the corner here, before I give up my top mounted position, something that I can look to do is if I get a nice tight gift wrap like this, because the more that I pull, the more he wants to pull in response. Right? So whenever I go here, he's pulling in response. He's making a gap of space here when he's pulling. So if I can punch through that place here and I can get over here like this on top of his neck. So this is the modified gift wrap position here like this. Now from here, if I pull this nice and tight and I wedge this arm down here, it's a very painful kind of choke. So it's not always the cleanest, but it is getting the pressure enough for the choke. Now, even beyond this, like the version I like even better, because like just sometimes from here, it's just pain in his neck, is if I can reach up and I can grab his actual elbow. If I can do that and now I squeeze, that's a lot cleaner of a choke and it's a lot tighter. So again, that one is I'm wedging here. He's coming over to defend it. I'm gonna get this gift wrap position. As I'm pulling on the gift wrap and he's opening that space, I'm punching up, taking this to the other side like a single wing choke with the gi. But I'm either grabbing here like this or getting my shoulder behind and I'm gonna grab his elbow. Once I grab that elbow, I pull that in tight, and then that's a really tight, nasty. Sometimes from this position too, if I can start getting him wedged over and he's reaching around my back, whenever I feel him reaching around my back like that, I know there's a lot of opportunity here. So as I start to step up this direction, when I get to this position, I have the opportunity sometimes, because his arm is so exposed, to go to this mounted Kimura variation, or I can even step across and start going for omoplatas or monoplatas, which is a variation from the mount. Now, something else that can happen whenever we do that, so I step over and across this direction, whenever I start to fall over to the side like this here, then from this position, if I go in here like this, then I'm essentially in the monoplata. The monoplata is a shoulder lock, but because of how he's going to typically try to turn and face and fight me here like this, I can also reach down and I can grab his head for the mounted GogoPlata. The monoplata and the mounted GogoPlata are 2 different things. One's a shoulder lock, one's a choke. In this case here, I'm doing the choke variation. So I'm flexing my foot down so it cups around his neck. I'm going to reach to the far side of his head and I'm going to try to connect my 2 hands here behind his head this way and pull in nice and tight. It's a nasty choke, so be careful, of course, when you're training this or any of the chokes that I showed. If you do find yourself mounted though, and you're trying a lot of these different chokes, you're trying to get him to react to the punch choke, you're trying to get him to react to you wedging his arms up and down, something that you can resort to, and I say resort to because it's not the nicest move in the world, is the smother, sometimes called mother's milk, sometimes called the waterboard. So whenever we get in this position here, I've got my arm underneath, and again, I need to get his head squared up facing me, right? So to do that, I'm gonna take my other arm underneath and I'm gonna try to bring my biceps close together like this. So when my biceps get close enough that my elbows are coming off the ground, I'm gonna place his nose in the cleavage here of my chest so that I've got it kind of wedged in. And then from there, as I drive forward here, yeah, it's a really nasty submission because what it's doing essentially, it's plugging his nose and his mouth, and it's kind of smashing down and cranking on his face too. So it's not the most polite thing in the world to do, but it is a technical move in the sense that you are causing a smother kind of tap. So it is adjacent to a strangle or adjacent to a choke. So I'm going to put it in the category with these mounted chokes. All right, guys, so these are some of my favorite no-gi mounted chokes and choke adjacent in some cases. But anyway, there's a lot of good options from here, and there's a lot of these things that connect well to other setups. So you can transition from choke to choke. Sometimes you can use it to start setting up back exposure and chasing his back. Sometimes you use it to start setting up arm locks and other submissions. So let me know what you think about these, and let me know if I missed any of your favorite mounted chokes and what they are and how they work, so I can add them to the list later on. I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, do all the things you're supposed to do on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching Night Jiu-Jitsu.